Well, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jamie. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon, Anish.
So please enjoy some tea. As you know, you may know, it's Numari culture
Thank
to
you very
share
much.
a drink before we start a discussion of business.
Appreciate it.
Is this your first time in Numar?
It is not. It's my second, actually.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what did you do on your first trip?
Yeah, so the first time we met with some other distributors,
Okay.
and then they just took me around the city. We went to the famous club. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but that's what I thought it was. And yeah, I was just here overnight, but it was a good time.
Okay. So let me introduce myself. So I'm fairly new with the company,
Okay.
but I'm going to be doing our discussion of a potential distribution agreement.
Right?
I think the most useful way we can come to some kind of a agreement today is maybe we discuss what our key interests are, what our concerns are,
Okay.
and then progress towards finding some kind of a common ground.
Okay, I totally agree.
So I'd like to start off with just asking, how familiar are you with the Numari drinks market?
Yeah, again, I'm also very new to this company. I joined 3 months ago, so much like you, I'm just trying to learn the ins and outs of the country. I was in operations management at a previous company, but never specifically in the Midwest region. So this is my first time actually trying to do business in Numar, especially, which is why we're trying our best to meet with as many distributors as possible, just to kind of learn the market dynamics. I know that foreign countries were expelled quite recently, and then now we're allowed to be back in. So this is very new to us. We have some agreements already, but again, not much experience in the market.
Okay. What are your main expectations or goals from your distributors in
Right.
this region?
So the biggest thing for us is to reach an agreement for our soft drinks products at this point. We already have agreements for some of our other specialty beverages, so we're not interested in looking at that at this point in time. But mainly what we want to come to an agreement today is a soft drinks agreement to distribute those across the country. We have a couple specifications as to what we expect from our distributor, which I think we can get into a little bit later.
Okay.
Just quickly, if you don't mind me asking, what are your capabilities in Numar? I know that you guys have been here for a while. I'm just trying to get a sense of kind of how the market works. How do distributors, work with retailers? Kind of just shed some light on that if possible.
Absolutely. So I think it's fair to say that we are one of the premier drinks distributors in Numar, and we're in the process of growing very quickly. We'll probably discuss that later on. So I think our main core competency, I don't know if you know that much about how business works in Numar, but it's very much relationship based.
Okay.
Very different from some other countries.
Right.
Really, who you know is very important. So we have very strong relationships with the key personnel in government. As you may know, we used to have a contract with you a few years ago.
Correct.
And we were able to gain special government dispensation when no other companies were able to operate. I think that clearly shows the reach that we have within the country.
Okay.
And we also have excellent relationships with possible retailers. So we actually have one of our board members was previously a board member of one of the largest, in fact the largest restaurant chain in Numar. So I think that really just goes to show the strength of the relationship that we have, and especially in a country where relationships are so important.
Right.
I think it puts us in an unparalleled position to be your distributor.
Okay, great. So that covers that. So I know that the way I kind of wanted to tackle this, I know you just mentioned outline, and I think I'm kind of on the same page with that. I think the first thing I wanted to kind of go into was what we expect from a distributor in Numar. Then we can kind of get into the economics of the contract, because obviously that's extremely important, and then kind of the ancillary details. So we're really interested in doing some corporate social responsibility initiatives here.
Absolutely.
So we can get into that kind of that. So does that make sense? Okay.
Brilliant.
So you touched on kind of the core competencies and stuff. One of the issues I've struggled with in terms of a distributor is what's sort of the relationship between distributors and retailers. So is it distributors have all the power, and towards the end of the year they can kind of channel stuff inventory and report better numbers, or is it kind of the retailer has the power and they get to decide how much to take from the distributor?
I would say it depends on a case-to-case basis.
Okay.
I believe that we have a strong capability when it comes to pressuring some of our smaller retailers.
Okay.
But also you must understand that relationships here require lots of mutual respect and care. And so with some of our larger customers, say this restaurant chain that I just mentioned, we would be in more of a 50-50 relationship.
Okay. And also, how do you, from a distribution standpoint, how do you guys take care of external factors? So I know that in this country, there's a lot of things like inclement weather issues, there's government issues, there's security concerns. So how does your company kind of combat that and make sure that it doesn't really tackle into the sales?
Sure. So I think that here really local knowledge is key. As you may know, we're really the only solely domestic company within Newmar.
Okay.
There are other companies that have a lot of foreign operations, but I think that compromises their local knowledge.
Okay.
And we have years and years of experience of how to deal with the weather, how to deal with security concerns.
Okay.
We have strong relationships with the government, with local institutions, with the police, with the courts. So I really don't think that that's ever been an issue for us.
Okay, and in terms of the competitive advantage that you guys offer, I know that obviously you're not the biggest distributor in the country for these types of products, but obviously it's clear that you guys have some sort of competitive advantage because you guys have been relatively successful. So can you maybe just touch on those?
Sure.
Briefly?
So as I mentioned, I think relationships really are key. We also have an excellent sales force.
Okay.
We had to scale back our operations a little bit in the past few years, but we've actually been able to keep on most of our sales force, so we really have the potential to grow very quickly. Okay. Speaking of growth, so you mentioned we're not currently the largest producer. We're actually in talks to consolidate one of the smaller players in within the beverage industry, and we actually would then become the largest the largest supplier in the country.
Okay. Just in terms of that, it seems, so I know just from some of the information I've gotten from colleagues that your company is currently in kind of financial distress on the verge of bankruptcy. So, obviously our contract will give you guys some life, but how do you think you guys can merge with another company if you guys are on the verge of bankruptcy and these guys are also a lot smaller?
So I wouldn't say we're on the verge of bankruptcy.
Okay.
We've been through some tough times, but then again, so is everyone in the country. It looks like, inshallah, things are turning out better in terms of the politics of the region.
Okay.
So I think that we're in a fairly strong financial position actually. In terms of the merger, yes, the merger would be contingent on us developing some new contracts.
Right.
But I see that actually not as a reason for concern for you, but actually a way in which we can come to some kind of common ground.
Okay.
So I was thinking that maybe we can discuss this further on when it comes to the ancillary details.
Right.
But I think we could come up with some way in which your stake in our future would make our incentives aligned.
Okay. No, that's a great idea. And just lastly on the distribution side, before we move in, I guess, to the contract, if that's what you want to take this, is how do you go about positioning products in retail outlets? So I know that in some stores, as you mentioned, you have more power over the retailers than in others. So in those stores, would our products be at the front of the store at like eye level, retail level, and in the restaurants, kind of less power? So how do you guys go about that?
I'd say that we would absolutely attempt to make your products first and foremost. You would become one of our larger suppliers in the country, and so really our goal would be to accommodate however you would like your products to be placed.
Okay.
We can ensure that we have them at perfect eye line, and we can ensure that the first item listed on the menu. Absolutely, there are no issues there.
Okay. And lastly, is there any risk of cannibalization of our products with some of the distribution agreements that you already have? So do you already have some big name soft drink companies that you're distributing for, and then our products would then cause tension?
I don't believe so. I believe that it's a relatively small market, a relatively nascent market right now, and I think that we wouldn't risk much cannibalization. And if there were any cannibalization, that would not be of risk to you.
Okay.
That would purely be a risk for us.
Okay.
But we're more than willing to take that risk.
Okay, great. So I think in terms of distribution, it seems like you guys obviously know what you're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about contract now?
I have a few more questions.
Okay,
That's
sure.
all right. So we've discussed what your expectations are, what your concerns are. Your concerns are maybe safety, security of sales, and those are things we can definitely factor into a potential contract.
Okay.
So that's excellent. I just wanted to ask, so in recent contracts in recent regions, how have you gone about structuring them?
Yeah, so typically what we do, especially in the Midwest region, so right now we have contracts in place in a country called Soman, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, very similar to Newmar. So the way we structure contracts there is they're always 1 year of rolling contracts where we never lock ourselves into agreements past 1 year, and that's because in countries in the Middle West, there's obviously a lot of political uncertainty. The government obviously gets involved in foreign affairs and foreign countries operating domestically, and we never think it's appropriate for our company to lock ourselves in a contract for 5 years when 1 year down the line we may be kicked out of the country and then lose 4 years worth of sales. So we always do 1 year. We also always have a break-even target that the distributor must meet in order to renew their contract for the following year. As I'm sure you know, in the beverage industry, margins are extremely tight. So if we don't hit about an 80% break-even point of sales in any of our countries, we face a significant fear of losing money, and then we'll actually move either renegotiate with other distributors or just move operations fully. So we are very short-term focused on our contracts.
Okay. Have you thought about your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so in terms of our marketing strategy, we're probably going to handle that in-house unless there's a compelling reason for us to give that to you guys. We do have a dedicated team that does marketing for our Midwest operations. So in terms of marketing, we were going to kind of handle that on our front. But we are open to hearing your ideas and possibly teaming up and coming up with a marketing strategy if that's something that's of interest to you
I
guys.
think that's absolutely the best way we can
Okay.
create some value here would
Okay.
be linking up our local expertise. Obviously, you have significant experience and a significant budget when it comes to marketing, but I think maybe some local expertise
Okay.
and very targeted advertising campaigns, say, could really be beneficial
Okay.
to you. So I think
Yeah,
that,
we're definitely
that's an
open to
excellent
talking
area
about
for
that.
us. So would you like to now discuss maybe some contract
Yeah,
ideas?
I think that's the best way. So I guess I'll start with the contract. So as you know, we have tons of contracts in place around the world. So the way that we typically go about our contracts, we made it. The offer I'm about to give you is as fair as possible. So what I did here was I took a look at the past 5 years worth of data on contracts that we've given to a similar size distributor in Saman, and then I looked at the growth rate of the contracts just because of obviously we have to factor in things like inflation, increase in production costs for you guys, increase in input costs, things like that. So what I did was I took last year's contract and just grew by our growth rate that we've seen over the past 5 years. So our current offer for a contract is sitting at about $3.89 million for the year. And obviously that's contingent on our 80% break-even point. So that's initially where we stand, but obviously we'd love to hear what you guys think and are willing to discuss.
Okay. And have you thought of any non-financial
Yeah, so what we were looking at is potentially if certain thresholds are met, so we'll talk about that, but what we were looking at from a non-financial standpoint was possibly giving you distribution rights to some of our other beverages. So right now, obviously, to my knowledge, we're focusing on our 4 key soft drink products, and we're going to give you guys exclusive distribution rights to those 4 products. But in following years, we think that if you guys do a great job, we're more than happy to give you guys access to some of our other products, like our Everade is obviously a huge product. Our Wapple iced tea is obviously, again, another large product. And we currently have distribution rights for those in the country, but we're happy to consolidate all those rights under one distributor name if you guys prove that you guys can do a great job.
Okay, so how would you characterize these extra brands that you have?
Yeah, so they're not soft drinks. I would say they're specialty juices and specialty drinks. So obviously the soft drinks are those that are carbonated, so those are your Pepsi, your Diet Pepsi, things like that. And then our soft drinks and other products are performance drinks like Everade. We have certain iced teas and different flavors like that. So they're more specialty products, but also gain a lot of traction in some of these markets.
Okay. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll add about the contract, just to get it out of the way, is it has to be extremely confidential. So that's something that we put in all of our contracts, where none of the economics behind contracts can be disclosed to the public. And that's obviously because if we later down the line we start negotiations in other countries, other distributors, we fear that if they know what we're doing with some other companies, they may try to use that to leverage us in an unfavorable position.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think we have a lot of potential here.
Okay.
Absolutely a lot of potential. So I would say, you suggested 3.89 million before,
Mm-hmm.
And that was contingent on 80% distribution.
So that would be paid up front. So that would be paid throughout the life of the contract. But what I mean by contingent, sorry if I didn't make that clear, is to be able to renew the contract over the next year.
Okay.
We need you to reach 80%. So that the cost of the contract will obviously be paid to you irrespective of sales, and that's just because, for obvious reasons, you need that money up front to do your operations.
Mm-hmm.
But the 80% is contingent on being able to roll that contract forward over successive years.
Okay. So I think that's an excellent idea,
Okay.
and that was something I was looking to for the contract as well.
Okay.
However, I feel like the 80% threshold
Mm-hmm.
is difficult because it locks us in
Okay.
a certain way.
Okay.
Now, although I'm very optimistic about the future of Newmar, I don't think we can personally guarantee the absolute stability of the
Okay.
country, purely because there are factors outside of our control. Now, just because sales fell below 80% in 1 year, that wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing for you.
Right.
It may not be financially optimal in the first year, but it might be that there was some issue within the country, distribution just couldn't happen. But you've built up sufficient brand equity that years later, further down the line, you've established yourself as a brand through a strong marketing campaign, and you can actually reap the benefits further down the line.
Okay.
So what I was thinking was more of, say, a sliding scale, whereby our fee would be dependent on the percentage of distribution of the market we're able to hit.
Okay.
So say instead of saying 3.9 million to round for 80%, flat out, we'd say 3.9 million if we can hit 80%. We'll say 3 million if we hit 70%, and 2 million if we hit 60%.
Okay. So I understand your concerns on that front. So I think the biggest issue with doing a scheme like that is, in our last shareholder meeting, it was extremely important for our stakeholders that we succeed in these Middle West regions. So even if we have one off year, so as you mentioned, sales might not hit 80% 1 year, and that's obviously not detrimental, but to our investors, that's a large issue. They need us to consistently hit that mark every year and hold that consistent. So it is extremely important to us to be able to somehow hit that threshold. In terms of a scheme, again, our only issue with doing a scheme is I don't know how the distribution network necessarily works, which is why I tried to get some color on that. But what we're afraid of is at the end of the year, if you guys are trying to hit that 80% mark, you guys just throw inventory down your retailers' throats and then report a figure of 80%. But really, the retailers only sold 65% of our inventory, and then that's what gets reflected on our statement. So we're a little bit concerned with channel stuffing. And I don't know if you guys can maybe provide some insurance on that front, and then maybe we can discuss.
I think that, given, as I mentioned, we have significant respect for our clients, our relationships, I can confirm that's not something that we would attempt to do.
Okay.
But if you would like to build something into the contract that insures against that, I am more than happy to do that.
Okay.
Now, although I understand, again, your concerns are that your shareholders will be unhappy if you don't hit a certain level of sales, but I do think that purely having a hard and fast rule of 80%, otherwise you cancel the contract, isn't actually in your interest.
Okay.
I think that given the complications of, firstly, there will very soon be only two major players within this country. Changing back and forth every time sales don't hit 80% isn't in your long-term interest.
Okay.
That's going to cost you a lot in terms of legal fees, setting up new contracts, moving your distribution around, changing trucks going from one warehouse to another warehouse. I think that's unnecessarily complicated to do on a 1 year basis.
Okay.
And it may just be the case that neither company had the potential to hit 80%.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, I think a sliding scale may make more sense.
Okay.
But I also think that maybe that 80% rule could be relaxed or could at least be applied over a longer time horizon.
Right. Okay. You know what? I think that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we do this? Why don't we structure some sort of sliding scale that we set? But I'm happy with the sliding scale. But what I think we need to do is set a floor. So if we hit the lowest possible percent, then we have to change something. Because as I mentioned, 80% is our target every year. But I think something like 70% would be our absolute lowest we could go. That's like our financial break-even point. So anything lower than 70%, we're bleeding money, and that's a huge issue. So I think if we do a sliding scale that we aim for 80, bottom is 70, and at 70, we either change the distribution contract, change the economics of it, or renegotiate the whole thing altogether. But I am happy to do a sliding scale. I think that seems really interesting. Okay,
excellent. Now, the other thing I wanted to discuss was back to your specialty brands. So as I mentioned, we're looking at maybe rolling up the Numari drinks market, and the company we're looking for is involved in juice and specialty brands. Okay. So I was wondering, what your plans are in terms of launching your products here, and maybe the potential of a joint venture.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, right now we already have an agreement for our specialty drinks. What we're focused on right now with you guys is our soft drinks, but obviously we think it's in our best interest to roll everything up and consolidate that as well, just in terms of sharing costs and whatnot. Dealing with one distributor as opposed to two obviously makes more sense. So what we were thinking was, for the first year, we kind of wanted to leave those guys with those distribution rights and just solely focus on our soft drink market. Those make up majority of our sales, so it's really important for us to be focusing on that over the first year. Market. Exactly. Absolutely. And then in subsequent years, we're happy to, based on performance, I think is the best way to judge this, is to roll up those agreements and bundle them all together with you. I think you guys would be our more favorable outlet to bundle everything up than our current distributor, just because of your size and scale. Obviously they're not the biggest players here either. So we think in terms of that, it makes a lot more sense to roll it up with you guys.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of structure were you thinking of? Were you thinking of setting up a separate company to work purely in Newmar or in the Middle West?
Company for us?
Yes. Or were you going to keep operations fully in-house?
Yeah, so we were gonna keep this solely a distribution right kind of play here. So we were gonna hold all of our operations back home and then leave you guys to handle all the distribution. In terms of the marketing, we were originally gonna take that on ourselves, but again, we're happy to discuss maybe bundling that up as well. But in terms of actually setting up a full office and running operations ourselves, that was never in the near-term plan.
Okay.
That's kind of the point of us getting a distributor. We know our market very well, and we know you know your market very well, and we don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to try to come here and learn something that would take decades of knowledge that you probably already have. So there was never any plan to set up shop here.
Okay. Excellent.
So why don't we hash out the contract, and then we can talk about some of the ancillary stuff. So in terms of my initial offer of 3.9, we'll call it, what are your thoughts on that? So I know obviously we're going to do some sort of a scale here, which I like, but where did you kind of want to set the base contract? So the 80% target is what we want to achieve.
Okay,
3.9.
so I think based on recent recent inflation, recent issues in the area. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty about what would be a fair contract level. Now, I am willing to accept the 3.9 as our base level.
Okay.
For 80%, I think that's a very fair offer.
Okay.
What I'm more worried about is what is the lower bound? What happens at the lower bound? Because we need to ensure our contracts, and also we also would like to discuss the term of the contract.
Okay. So in terms of the lower bound, so I never thought about this scaling thing. So I never came up with a lower bound for our offer. 3.9 was kind of our baseline fairest we could go based on current comparable contracts that we have in the market. What is sort of your, if you will, break-even cost for this contract? What's the lowest you guys could accept to be able to continue doing what you do?
I mean, the lowest is a very difficult concept to nail down. I don't think we would be happy with the contract where we're making less than $1.5 million.
Okay.
But again, we'd also need some kind of financial security.
Okay. Okay. Well, in that case, I think if we say 70%, I think $2 million sounds fair for 70%. Obviously, 1.5 you said is way too low. I think we're happy to do $2 million at 70%, and then scale it up. Obviously, based on based on that. In terms of your upper bound, what were you thinking above 80%?
I mean, obviously 100% is not an attainable level.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And also, I guess above 80%, you're making a significant margin on that. I'm sure your fixed costs make up a large component of your cost. Your variable cost should be fairly low. So I feel like the scale should increase, if not exponentially, then at least significantly. Okay. So maybe if we were to say hit 85%.
Okay.
We'd be looking at something more like $6 million.
Okay. So $6 million is a little bit high, and I'll tell you why. So in years prior, the largest contract we've actually ever done was about $4.5 million, and that was considered to be a very expensive contract for the distribution agreement that we were getting.
May I ask how many years ago that was?
That was, I want to say 2 years ago.
Okay.
But I'll double check that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think it's 2 years ago. So yeah, we add inflation, we add a little bit of growth to that. But I think again, $6 million is a little bit high, and the reason I say that is the difference between 80 to 85%. I don't think necessarily justifies almost a twofold increase in the contract size.
Okay.
Especially we wanted to do some CSR initiatives with you, which we were hoping to allocate some of the money towards that. Do some advertising as well, which maybe we can talk about later. So $6 million for the contract might be a little bit high. I think in terms of if we hit 85%, something along 4.5 to 4.8 might seem a little bit more reasonable.
Okay. I think, I think 4.5 sounds about fair, and I'll happily take that.
Okay. Okay, so
If that's what you think is fair.
Yeah. So this, we'll call this the 1-year contract for this year.
Yes.
Okay, great. So confidentiality we've already agreed on. We'll sign some sort of non-disclosure that says that there's at no point in time can we disclose any of these agreements, and that's fair. Okay. Length we've hit. We said we'll do 1 year. So why don't we talk about some of the advertising and CSR initiatives that we want to take on. So what are your current CSR practices? So are you guys currently involved? Or sorry, do you want to go back to something else quickly?
No. I'm happy. I'm just double checking.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Yes, so absolutely. So CSR is actually not something we've focused on in the past few years. As you know, it's been a very complicated market to work in.
Okay.
And we've really been focusing a lot on our operations. We haven't been able to get that in depth.
Okay.
On CSR.
Okay. So it's clear that all Western countries, or Western companies, have been accused of promoting inhumane labor conditions for workers in your countries over the past few years, and things like that, and that really affects our brand. So we're extremely concerned with that negative brand image being associated with some of our products and us losing out on potential sales. So we were hoping to do some sort of initiative, either team up or we do it separately, to either do donations or run an event or do some sort of philanthropic event, if you will, to kind of increase our brand value, kind of show that we're promoting more humane labor conditions in the country, trying to show that we hire fairly, we pay fairly, things like that. So do you guys have any thoughts? I know this is obviously our first time, it's my second time here, so I'm not too familiar with what.
So I think that's an excellent idea, and I think that would really be beneficial for your brand. As a result, for us, if we were to make a contract, so I think it's definitely in both our interests here.
Okay.
I think that our role in this would be most useful if it were kind of more in a local advisory role.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we have the financial capability right now to put a lot of funding into these initiatives.
Okay.
But in terms of the branding and the marketing strategy you're going to pursue in Newmar, I think it's very useful for you. So we're more than happy to help lend our resources in terms of helping you find out which areas are important to target. What would be a good way to what's good language, what's good tone to use in your marketing of these CSR initiatives. So I think our role would be most useful for your advisory, but we're more than happy to give any resources you need. Okay,
so we were actually thinking of, I ran this by my boss before I flew down here. We were actually thinking of allocating between $50,000 to $100,000 for the year to do something along the lines of what I just previously talked about. And that would be solely from our company, so we wouldn't expect you guys to take any of the financial burden. But we'd love some advice on what you think we could craft, whether it be an event, whether it just be a one-time donation. But the kind of the goal here is to promote humane labor working conditions for our company. Okay. So what do you think we can do with that money?
Your specific things.
Yeah, I don't know. Should we make a donation, a one-time donation to a workers' force, or should we be running an event to raise awareness? I'm not too sure what really bodes well with the people of Newmar.
I think that maybe something that would appeal to the youth would be useful. Obviously, that's a large market for you with your soft drinks. Right. So maybe something like sponsoring a youth soccer league in the country, something like that. I think that would be really good. That would help your brand awareness. And you could mention the importance of humane working conditions, no child labor, things like that. Right. Which are obviously issues in the region. Okay, that sounds like a great idea. We'll take that back, and I think that's going to be a for sure thing that we're looking to do this year. So we're excited about that. Okay, so did you want to talk a little bit about some of the ancillary things we can tack on now, or? So as you now know, we're interested in this roll-up of the juice company. Okay. Now, the important thing for us is our ability to gain financing for this, and that is going to be contingent on us having long-term agreements. Okay. Now, I know you mentioned that you have concerns, and 1 year is really your target. Right. But I think in order for us to be able to reach our bridge loan conditions for this financing, I think that we'd have to look at least a 2-year contract. Okay. And that's a 2-year contract for the contract we just talked about? Yes. Exactly. Okay. So, again, especially because we already have an agreement for other drinks,
and the fact that this is our first year back into the market, given the whole government crew thing that just got removed, we're really hesitant to lock into long-term contracts because we're scared that 6 months from now we get kicked out and then we still have to pay up all the fees that we owe you guys while getting no sales from it, and that would be a huge blow to our bottom line. So I think at least in the first year we're really keen on only doing a year contract just to kind of see how it plays out, just to see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so what if we could find right in the contract a way that just mitigates your risk there? So say we would the fee would be paid on a periodical basis.
Okay.
So on a 6 monthly basis, and if at any time your license to distribute to operate in the country were revoked, then the contract would cancel. That way you have less risk. We could say set up a 2-year contract, and if after 1 year, if at any point in fact things go south politically, we could cancel the contract on the spot.
Okay, so
that mitigates your risk and at least helps us.
So what do you guys gain from? So obviously having a longer term contract will obviously be more favorable in terms of the terms you get on your bridge loan. So that makes sense to me. But 1 year versus 2 year, and the fact that I'm not going to be paying periodically, as long as you meet the 70% threshold that we've set, we're most likely to almost certain going to renew the contract with you guys anyways. Mm-hmm. So my only fear is that there's a chance that we don't hit 70%, and then we're in a lot of trouble. Because again, my biggest concern is that we hit that 70% every year. Otherwise, we're bleeding money.
Now, I want to confirm. I'm not worried that we won't hit the 70%.
Okay.
It's really what can I take to the bank and show them.
I'm
not concerned about this sales threshold at all.
Okay.
It's really I'm going to have to go and engage with this third party who isn't part of this conversation, who can't tell this is a very amicable conversation with the goal of a long-term contract.
Right.
I need to be able to take them something that says we have some security.
Okay.
Because they may not do the same due diligence you do. They don't have the same alignment of interests as we do.
And this is all in hopes of consolidating your business with another player, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, do you mind if I ask who that player is?
The player is Kaid.
Okay, because they're the ones that we currently have our distribution agreements with. So it seems like our interests are actually pretty much aligned here, because we obviously have agreements with them. So if you guys were to consolidate with them, you would innately get our distribution contract, right? Unless we were to renegotiate at some point. Mm-hmm. So the only reason you want to do 2 year versus 1 year is to get your contract, mm-hmm. or sorry, your bridge loan, right?
Yes.
And okay, I mean, I don't see any reason not to do that apart from the 70%. But what I will say is, if we do this 2 year contract, I think we'd have to reevaluate sales on either every 2-3 months just to know that we're on track, because my fear is that halfway through the year we think we're going to hit it, and then we get to the end of the year and we come nowhere close to that figure, but then we're locked in for that 6 month payment, because I know I can end it after that 6 months, but that 6 month worth of payment I'm already out, right? So I think if we do more periodic checks in terms of the payments, I think doing a 2 year contract wouldn't be too big of an issue.
Okay, I think that's fair. So you're thinking every quarter?
Yeah, I think every quarter. Yeah, I think every quarter we check, with the optionality to opt out at any given quarter. Is that what we're saying? Or with the optionality to opt out at the end of the first year.
So I believe that it would be fair to opt out at the end of each quarter.
Okay, I agree with that. So
but this would be contingent. This would only happen if we fail to hit this threshold.
Correct. I was going to follow up. I think what we should address is, are sales lumpy here? So is it like every quarter we're going to see 1/4 of 70%, or is it kind of like?
So honestly, that is probably the issue. Is that the overall size of the market will shift.
Okay.
Summer months, we're going to see more sales,
okay.
especially in things like our especially juice products.
Right.
Now, depends on how we're defining our percentage of sales, if it's of the overall market sales in that quarter, mm-hmm. or if it's your total annual market.
Yep.
I think if we look at what the total sales are in that quarter, then this contract makes sense.
Okay.
But I would say yes, sales may be a little bit lumpy. I don't think it's fair to say they'll be completely evenly distributed just because the summer months are so much warmer.
Yeah, so I think we do.
During Ramadan, people will be drinking less.
Oh no, definitely. So I think I think what we do here is we do a percent of the quarter, and then as the quarters go by, we do a summation and we see if we're on track to hit 70%.
Do you mean cumulative over the course of the year?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
each quarter we do a cumulative sum, and let's say 2 quarters in, we're at 35%. That sounds pretty reasonable, given the fact that summer might pick up even more, so we might even go above 70%. So I think as long as we check in that sense, and we have the optionality to get out, we're happy to do that. Now, in terms of the second year contract, so we have the terms for the first year. For the second year, are we keeping I think, based on the fact that we're locking into a 2-year agreement, I think that we should keep the numbers, the size of the contract the same.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about it?
That seems fair.
Okay.
The one thing I would ask about is, what would be the terms of your contract with Kaid?
Sorry, what do you mean in terms of?
Would these terms apply to the Kaid contract once we took over their business?
So I think if this merger happened, I think we're going to have to reevaluate the terms of all these agreements. Right now, the scheme that they have is nothing like what we have. They have a one-time contract fee, and if they don't meet their threshold, we move on. But they've consistently been able to meet that, so we're okay with that for now. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we do want to try to consolidate because we think there's more cost sharing in that sense. But in terms of the actual terms of their agreement in the case of a takeover, we haven't gone over that with them yet because this is the first time we're hearing about a potential merger between you guys. So we'd have to discuss that with them. I'm not going to speak on their behalf because I have no idea where their interests align in terms of this merger and our distribution agreement.
I mean, obviously, if this merger were to happen,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you would be negotiating with us. You wouldn't be negotiating
Correct.
with them anymore.
Correct.
I think that it's fair that we would just simply apply the same contract to Kaid once the takeover happens.
Okay, so you're saying this exact thing applies to those beverages as well.
We'll scale it for the size of the market.
Okay. Okay, so that we're fine with that. I think that makes sense. But what I do think we need to do is, I think every 2 years we block off and we reevaluate the economics behind the contract. Again, we're not especially keen on doing this 2-year scheme, but we think that it makes sense with you guys because you guys do have some great capabilities that we're looking forward to. But I think that we can't extend it past 2 years, and every 2 years we need to reevaluate and keep this optionality to cut the contract at any quarter. So as long as we scale it by equal size for the beverages that they have in their distribution agreement, but we leave in the fact that it's still a 2-year rolling agreement, I think that's fine.
Okay. I think that we seem to be in agreement on everything.
Okay, so I think that's everything that we wanted to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think we're happy. We're looking forward.
Would you like to just quickly
Let's do that.
clarify? So I have a sliding scale.
Correct.
So I had $2 million fee for 70% of the market, $3.9 million for 80%, and then 4.5 for 85%.
Okay.
We should throw in a number for 90% as well. Should we hit that threshold? As I know that you have been able to do in some places.
Yeah, I think above 85%. I think 4.5 is more than enough because that's the highest contract we've ever given, and especially in the first couple of years, as you mentioned, it's going to be very tough to break above 85%. So this 4.5 is only going to be for the first 2 years, anyways. So I think maybe further down the line, if we feel the need to go to a 90% threshold, I think that's more than capable. I think in the first years, anything above 85, I think is fair.
You know, I'll accept that.
Okay.
I'll accept that. So we can have quarterly checks on sales, adjusted for seasonal differences.
Yep.
You will have the optionality to opt out at the end of each quarter. The contract is aiming to run for 2 years.
Correct.
Again, the optionality is in your hands there, and then the same contract will apply to Kaid in our takeover.
Scale to size, yep.
Yeah. And then finally, we'll have a $50,000 to $100,000 of CSR budget.
Yep.
Preliminarily we're saying maybe a youth soccer league.
Yeah.
But we can decide on that in the future.
Yep.
And we fully offer to help and contribute to any
Perfect.
marketing in the region.
Okay.
And I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Would you like to just sign on the dotted line?
I would be more than happy to do that. You can do that as well right here.
Absolutely. So just next to Densico, if you could.
You as well. Perfect.
Absolutely. All right.
Pleasure doing business with you.
Business. Shukran.